Let's be really clear. It isn't astrology. You can do astrology from a place of the planets are doing things to you and you're a victim, right? You can do astrology from a place, you can do very like technical astrology from a worldview that is not helpful. And that happens, unfortunately, right? And so I think it's more the worldview that helps astrology be an incredibly useful tool. When you can turn around and see the stories of that great-grandfather and his perpetrator victim dynamic, you can differentiate and you stop living in perpetrator victim dynamics.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Coaches Ascension Podcast. My name is Grace Kelpis, and I am your host. Today, we are talking with Jackie Ames. She is an astrologer, a family constellations practitioner, and a body worker. We are going to be talking about how these techniques can help us in our own personal ascension, and how by doing so, we can impact the entire world's ascension. And if you listen all the way to the end, I'm going to give you a code so that you can listen to my own session with Jackie, where she and I did a one-on-one family constellations to help me get through something I was really stuck in. So stick around and get that code so that you can have an experience of family constellations for yourself. And of course, write down any questions or any things you might want to comment about while you're listening to this episode, and then drop them into the comments below. We would love to hear from you. Well, without further ado, let's get started and get to meet Jackie. Hi, Jackie.
Grace, how's it going?
Good. Welcome to our Coaches Ascension podcast. So for everybody who's listening, Jackie has been my astrologer for the last 10 years. And can you, it may be longer, actually.
Maybe longer. That is
2015, but 10 years, 2015 to 25. Yeah. Yeah. So I see Jackie minimum twice a year, and she also does Ralphing for me. And I've participated in some of her constellation sessions, and she is a very beautiful, unique bird, and I love her to death. And I just had to have her on the show. Thanks to her, I'm starting to study astrology. It's been a year and a half. I've taken 14 classes.
Wow.
Jackie, and I'm still looking at a chart and my eyes go, like, it is seriously, I'm like hardly fluent at the beginner level of this language. So I'm always super impressed by your ability to look at a chart and be like, well.
Oh, shucks.
Yeah. So, I am super, super happy to have you here with us. And I'm really excited about where this conversation might go, given the work that you do. So let's just open it up and start with like, how did you get into astrology, and how long have you been doing it, and what do you love about it? Like, just tell us.
Okay. All right, cool. So, well, and I want to just jump back for a second because this is something that confuses everyone I talk to. Constellation work has nothing to do with astrology. So in case we start talking about constellations, you can separate those two things in your mind. Constellation work is ancestral and family systems work, soul work. And yeah, does not use astrology. But so how did I get into astrology? So I first heard a recording on a cassette tape of my girlfriend receiving a reading from somebody who would go on to be easily the most important teacher in my life. Not for astrology, just in general. And so I listened to this thing. I knew he had never met her. And I was like, how is it possible that this total stranger understands my person so well? It just blew my mind. And I certainly was someone who, like, if you had asked me a year before getting into astrology, I didn't know anything about it, right? So I thought it was just like the 12 signs. And I would have told you, well, that's the most ridiculous thing ever. There's 12 kinds of people. That's ridiculous. Right? But listen to this gentleman, and obviously, he does what I will do is I will, in case people want to go back and understand why I'm saying what I'm saying, I will reference what I'm reading from, right? So it was clear it was a language. It was clear that he wasn't just making things up or being psychic or intuitive, although, who knows in any reading how much of that is coming into play. But but yeah, it was like a tangible language based on the actual positions of the planetary bodies. And I was absolutely floored and fascinated because what does that say about reality? Right. I know there's some people who it's just like, oh yeah, that might work, whatever. But for me, needed I needed to that clearly didn't make sense with the version of reality I had been taught existed. So there was this sort of gorgeous cognitive dissonance where I'm like, wait a minute. What I have been told about reality is clearly not exactly as it seems. And that, I'm making it sound like it was an instantaneous thing. I heard this reading, I was fascinated, I went to get my own reading. Similarly, I was absolutely flabbergasted and floored. And I started studying immediately. He loaned me some books. I was on fire. I couldn't put anything down. I was reading everybody's charts. There's a I lived with some dear friends a couple years into this, just Jackie on fire period, where they made a children's story with us as characters, and in that children's story, I am like a waitress who's asking the people who are ordering from me for their birth times, because because that's what I was like. I was getting everybody's data, and I wasn't doing readings for them, right? I was also getting their stories, and I was also like, does this sound right? Is this, tell me about, does, if I say this, does that apply to you? And sort of really being in conversation with it so I could tell where I was on base, where I was off base, what was working, what wasn't working. And to be totally honest, I had no intention of becoming an astrologer. Like that didn't enter my mind for years. I was just in love. Um, because I am that nerd, I know the date of my first astrology reading, which is kind of like the date and time of my relationship with astrology. And so that was January 6th, 2003. And I was 21.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, started so young. You really like it is a language, and you kind of took a degree in astrology on yourself. Like you went all in, and I mean that's like the age where kids come out of college and they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna be a whatever." And you're like, "This is it."
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
it's so
that's a
cool.
whole other story. I didn't go to college. And
Yeah.
so and that was like everyone I knew was in college. All of my friends were in college. And that we won't go into that story, but obviously I'm a very intellectually curious and philosophically intrigued person. So for me not to be in college was kind of a thing. And I didn't have a better course for my life than following my heart and my instincts, right? I didn't really see a future for myself as the truth.
Yeah.
Like as a teenager and early 20 something. I didn't see any future, so I was just shooting from the hip. Um,
Yeah.
and there's something else I wanted to say. Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, your brain's still developing, right? They say it's easier to learn a normal language and, Spanish, etc., whatever language before the age of 25, right? So, I mean, at this point, I've had astrology in my life longer than I haven't. And it's
Hmm.
kind of it's like in there. It's just how I live my life.
Yeah, it's part of you. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that's really cool. Um, Even after getting readings from you for 10 years and having, a belief, obviously, I'm paying you to read my chart. I have a belief in astrology and how much that understanding can impact me. And when I started working with you, it was because I was going through this dark night of the soul that felt like it was lasting forever. I remember you were literally like, "Yep, 20 years." I was like, "What?" She said, "Well, you got a few more years to go." So, and I kept seeing you because it really helped me through the harder parts of it, that it wasn't my fault. Like this is part of my education. This is part of my life curriculum, so to speak. And it took a big weight off me, even though things were more difficult. I felt like I was on the right path, that being on the right path doesn't always mean easy. in fact, it can often be most challenging. Um, and that made just all the difference in the world for the background sort of spirituality belief in what I'm doing is okay, even though it doesn't feel good. It's the right thing. And sure as crap, it certainly was. I wouldn't be where I am today. I honestly think I would be an alcoholic if I hadn't like really hit the eject button and reset my life. I was headed that direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to have any supportive role in that
You
reset.
always do, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And what was I going to say? Oh, I resonate with the like, no one told me about this. Is this like the reset of the way that you think about how life works? Because even though I was seeing you for so long, I hadn't had that moment until I started studying it and got a couple layers down
Yeah.
beyond the ascendant, beyond the moon sign, beyond the sun sign. And we started to really get into it. And I was like, I don't understand. Like how, how
Yeah.
does a planet
Right.
define something in my life? And I'm still kind of digesting that and allowing that to kind of download
Yeah.
rather than trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that comment. And on that, I would love to hear from you, like how astrology really and the work that you do, why you feel it's really important and meaningful for yourself, but also for your clients.
Yeah. Well, so I think the first thing I want to say is that I got very lucky with this teacher in particular because it's not what happened for me was like a software, like an operating system switch, right? Like where I was in a scientific materialist. I have no reason. I always believed in the soul. I always had some instinct that there was, why would it be that simple? It doesn't make sense that it's that simple, but I could not have imagined like the picture that I now have that sense of. And let's be really clear. It isn't astrology. You can do astrology from a place of the planets are doing things to you and you're a victim, right? You can do astrology from a place, you can do very like technical astrology from a worldview that is not helpful. And that happens, unfortunately, right? And so I think it's more the worldview that helps astrology be an incredibly useful tool. And I had a lot of help. I had a lot of help with that worldview with that teacher who happened to be, you know, a professor in the world's spiritual traditions at a college level and taught philosophy for decades and was also for decades a practicing astrologer. And he really took me under his wing and that operating system update took years. It really took me years to let go of some of the assumptions that you don't even know are in there and to start operating from a different place. So to steal a phrase, I believe from Einstein, fact check me if you want, folks. The field forms the thing, not the other way around.
The
That
field forms the thing. Say it again.
the field forms the thing, not the other way around.
Okay.
Maybe it's David Bohm, I'm not sure. That applies to both astrology and constellations, right? So we have a very causal, mechanistic impression of things, and it's not like things don't work at that level. But if you assume the field forms the thing and not the other way around, then it's not the planets doing something to you, but the patterns in consciousness are what have power on the specific incidences. Does that make sense? The field being the patterns in consciousness, the pattern of Mars squaring Uranus in your chart, right? The pattern in consciousness, that is what actually,
Is
and I
that what
actually
you're
don't even want to be that specific because I don't think that Mars squared Uranus creates it, but the field of meaning wherein you have your Uranian issues, right? And your relationship to that. And you also have your Mars issues, and the moment comes when those things get to express themselves in a certain way. And so the field of meaning influences the specific event. That's it's mystery, and I'm not trying to pit it down. I'm just trying to sort of explain how I've come to understand it. And this is also influenced by, the constellation work that I've done, where you're also very much letting the field inform what's happening. You're letting
Oh,
patterns
entirely.
entirely. You are
Yeah.
stepping off into complete and absolute trust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
Um,
just want to say this is something we teach in the Insight Advantage program, but about the field of consciousness and how our intuition in quotes, air quotes, is our ability to read some degree of the field or some level of the field, or to allow in knowledge from the field, however it applies in the moment. And the field being that we are all one collective consciousness. And I think what you're saying is that things arise from our collective consciousness. And I say collective as though it were plural, but only because we're experiencing it as plural, but it's actually one thing.
Okay, so this is one of the many gifts given to me by this teacher, is a
Yeah.
model that is in almost every spiritual tradition. If you look for it, really, really clear in Taoism, you've got the whole, right? You've got the big shebang, everything that is the whole, the unnameable, unknowable, everything, slash nothing. And then it differentiates, well, in Taoism, yin yang, right? So
Mhm.
first it splits into polarity, and then it differentiates into all these patterns, and then it differentiates into the 10,000 things, quote unquote, the 10,000 things, right? So it is the one, and it also is the many, but it gets there by way of broader patterns. So when I talk about the field forming the thing, um, you have, yeah, the collective field, but if you're stepping into a constellation, for instance, you are stepping into the collective, but also more specifically the family field, the field of the client, the family field of the client.
Mm-hmm.
So I just to help you out with that one and many thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? The
Mm-hmm.
one becomes the many.
Yeah.
That's a way to think about it, and it doesn't become the many by shattering into a million pieces. It does it through broader patterns.
Yes. And also that astrology is a representation of those patterns that come
Totally.
from that bigger, however
Totally.
you want to call it, source.
And that's one of the, can we cuss on this?
Sure, go ahead. Why
That's
not?
it's one of the mind fucks of astrology, is you have to parse it out, but you're always missing something when you're not reading the whole chart.
Mm-hmm.
The solar system is never just this one factor, right? And so it's trying to keep that background vision of the whole. And by the way, the solar system is just the solar system, right? And you get into Vedic astrology and you can start, or the fixed stars in general.
Yes, fixed stars and the galactic center and all these
Right.
other things that
You can
set
expand
up
it
the
further,
chart.
but
Yeah,
as you
feels
know,
like it's infinite. Just like,
it's infinite.
yeah.
And as you know well, you can spend your whole lifetime just focused on the solar system.
Mhm.
Um, and it's nearly impossible to keep that whole vision all the time, too.
So there is this huge, and maybe is it correct to say you probably follow more on the evolutionary astrology line
Oh, that's
given what you
interesting.
do?
I don't think of myself that way, but maybe it is.
Mhm.
So what I would say is uh, I really love, and I think I have the deepest grounding in traditional astrology, specifically Hellenistic astrology.
Mhm.
And I probably stole a lot of, but I do use a lot of evolutionary stuff, and I probably stole a lot of approach from Mark Jones, who happens to also be my therapist.
Really?
Yeah. So, and he's I think just an incredible example of somebody who is doing astrology from a place that is, I mean, he's laser focused on what's going to be useful, like deeply meaningfully useful. And so he's been an inspiration for me in that way around astrology. And I absolutely have taken a lot from the evolutionary astrology technique handbook, but it's similar to that first teacher being my teacher, but not actually my astrology teacher. Mark is not really my astrology teacher. He's much more my therapist slash a teacher, but not, I haven't done a deep dive in evolutionary. I know the basic techniques and I use them, but
Okay.
a lot of my technique is traditional, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. No, I don't know that you can do evolutionary astrology really well without having a traditional background. I mean, that's like the roots of astrology to the extent that we can study it. So,
Well, I mean, you have to remember,
yeah.
um, we just started digging up those roots in the 90s.
90s, yeah.
And
Hmm.
there was a lot of really good work being done um, in modern astrology before those roots were re-excavated in the West. And so I agree. I think they're incredibly useful and incredibly important, but like that was a seismic shift in the field of astrology to have that like that's starting to become the baseline in people's education as they start with that traditional
Hmm.
education. That was not the case. That was not the case by a long shot. For instance, when I went to Kepler, which I only went for about a year, or sorry, 2 semesters in 2008. That's like been the last 10 years. And I think that my personal bias, and I think a lot of people are getting to this place, is that they are best when they are synthesized,
Yeah.
for sure. But I mean, Mark is an example. He's going to give you one of the best readings of your life, and he is not using traditional techniques.
And he's
He's
leaning
going to give
into,
you the best reading of your life if you need it right then, right? He's
yes.
not someone, he's not someone you come to just because you're curious. I mean, you can, but
Yeah.
yeah.
But
Does
that's what
it,
I'm saying is like that someone, is it true what you're saying is that someone who comes to him,
yeah,
which I would say would be like me coming to you, honestly,
yeah,
is someone who's interested in their own self evolution, their own, they may not
yes,
call it ascendance, I call it ascendance, but self evolution, which is where
yeah,
evolutionary astrology comes from, is like, so what?
yes,
We need to use this if it's useful. If it's not useful, what's the point of trying to
100%,
learn this crazy language, right? So learning
100%.
is like, that's the thing in class that I get stuck on is like, sometimes people will do the like very black and white, like this or this. I'm like, okay, that all makes sense. And that wasn't initially what I saw,
Yeah,
but what you described as the effect of what you just saw is what I originally saw.
right.
It's a really
You,
strange
you have to remember too that traditional astrology was it wasn't forged in in this culture, and it wasn't forged with an evolutionary intent. As far as I can see. And I think I'm very, very happy to be wrong about that. I think it's incredibly useful for that sort of evolutionary intent. But when you look at the history of astrology, you have astrologers working for kings who are
yeah.
like planning the best time to start a war or to build a city, very practical, very technical, very reductionist in a way. And when you read a lot of those old, like original source texts, they are very black and white. And I'm not clear about whether that black and white nature is for the purposes of teaching, right? If it's just sort of understood that that's just like, this is how you learn, is all these very specific examples, or if it's literally they were trying to do it like math, like here's the equation, which I firmly believe. It is true you can get very technical and specific, but I firmly believe that the universe is just more creative than anybody else. And what you do see and find working with people is that people become more increasingly free with really difficult placements. right? That would doom you to a difficult life, with an evolutionary attitude, an Earth School attitude, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Wow. So you've recently, though, developed kind of your own combination of things between, and you may have to explain some of this, but between constellations and astrology, or how are you blending
Yeah.
some things?
Yeah. Well, thanks for asking. I am. And I shared with you that Pluto's on my midheaven, which is also my south node in Aquarius, which, if anybody knows astrology and is listening, maybe you won't be shocked. Um,
Uh,
um, and, so for context, for the past 12, 13 years, my professional shingle has read Rolfer/astrologer. So I'm also, you mentioned that you see me sometimes for Rolfing as well. I'm a body worker. Obviously, we've been talking astrology. The family constellation work is really, really close to my heart. And in a nutshell, I already mentioned Mark. So he's a psychosynthesis therapist. And in essence, he put out an announcement in like right around the solstice of 2021, like we're in the hells of COVID. And he basically was offering a psychosynthesis training, not an astrology training. His entire audience is astrologers, by the way, but it was specifically like a psychosynthesis training. And all my like ding, 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 ding. That happened to be also, I don't know if you remember the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction right around where Pluto and the South Node are. And I want to try to be succinct here and not draw this out forever. Essentially, psychosynthesis has become the connective tissue that allows me to use all of my tools so I can be as helpful as possible, right? If somebody comes for an astrology reading, they want to talk. It's going to be a conversation. It might be more of a monologue or a dialogue, but it's a conversation primarily. And I will try to push towards those edges of deeper meaning because that's where my heart lies. And some people are available for that and some people aren't. But within the context of psychosynthesis, I can use the ancestral work. I can use the astrology. I can put someone on the table and do a little body work with them if need be. And is what is a commonality between psychosynthesis and constellation work is this attending to what's emergent, right? So you are paying attention to the field. You are locked in with the field. And so it has been so magical. It's just been like we're in the conversation and there will be a moment when I'm turning to the charts and I just say maybe one thing the whole session from this person's chart. And then there will be a moment where I pull out the mats, and you know what the mats are. So the mats are the tools we use for constellations. And what is great about that tool is it really takes it out of the mind. It gives people an experience, and it's an experience that's very, very hard to deny, and it makes it very real to them that something is happening. It's easy for everyone, including me, to just sort of like chatter past the meaning. And if you give someone an experience, for instance, of bawling their eyes out over, to use an example of a not too long ago client, over an uncle that they literally never met because he died when he was 7. They've never met him, right? And then they have an experience that this grief in the family field is real and has impact. And it might have something to do with the way their father, his brother, is showing up, for instance. So um, not every I had been calling it ancestral psychosynthesis. I'm going to drop that because psychosynthesis is already a mouthful. People are coming back at me with like photosynthesis. What are you doing? Um, I'm like, yes, the light
We're using the
shows us.
light.
Yeah. Um, but really it'd be like I calling it ancestral astrological somatic psychosynthesis. Like
Yeah.
it's just going to be my version of psychosynthesis, which is me attending to the moment with the other person so that their higher intelligence can work with us both to get them where they need to go.
Yeah. So,
Which actually, so I want to pause.
yeah.
Probably not that different from what you do, huh?
Ah,
I don't know what Grace does.
yeah.
I just think of
I
you as
don't do enough
very
of it.
closely,
Let's put it
attending,
that way.
attending very closely to the field.
Yes. Yes. And a lot of often that field is not what it brings forth isn't necessarily the appropriate thing for that particular client. I don't know how to explain that, but um you so what
No, say more about that. Hold on.
well, agreements, right? And most of my clients are coming through contracts that have agreements about leadership and it's in a context. And so it kind of like keeps the agreements of the contract sort of drive what the outcomes are, and then how the client shows up has a lot to do with their readiness for going through a process to that outcome. So do they want to just like do something transactional, or are they reflective enough to do something transformational, or are they deep enough spiritually within themselves to do something transpersonal? And so it's variant, and often what I get from the field is like, this person just needs you to shut the fuck up right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so,
Yeah.
sometimes it's just direction. It's not even information for the client.
100%. There's
Yeah.
a lot of times it's say nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I mean is like sometimes it's for the client if they're more on the transformational, transpersonal end of things. And if they have the capacity to reflect multiple layers down, in other times, it's all for me to help that person begin the process of reflection that they may have never been taught or not be used to. And that's a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're as having been a body worker in the past and stuff, we're used to people coming to us for that, have that love, that kind of capacity to some extent. And most of the clients I receive are all over the map, so I have to be very attentive to what's
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah. You're more of a bridge builder than me, perhaps.
Yes, I am.
I'm way out there. I'm like, only you
Out.
can find me in the dark forest, you know.
Yeah, you got to know how to find the witch's cabin.
Right, 100%. It's awkward sometimes going to dinner gatherings with people who don't share my worldview at all. I'm like, what do you do? Yeah.
uh, that's our response when people ask me. I'm like, yeah, I'm a leadership coach. Can we move on? Yeah. Oh, well, so for those that don't understand family constellations, can you give like a little blurb about what does
Yeah.
that look and feel like to be a part of that?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for asking. I, I, not that I have favorites. Obviously, I expressed my true love for astrology already, but constellation work, it's almost like astrology is reading the vibrant patterns of reality, and constellation work is being in them.
I love that distinction.
You know, it's like music. It's like living in them. And so in a nutshell, it was developed by a gentleman named Bert Hellinger, although not created by him, but really developed by him. And he was something. He was a powerhouse and a renegade and a beautiful soul and pissed a lot of people off in a nutshell. Um, but I think the thing that he needed to deliver to the world loud and clear, the Western world who had forgotten, is that our ancestries matter. You're not randomly delivered to this family. You have a deep relationship not only to your parents and your siblings, but your grandparents and your great grandparents and possibly your great great grandparents. And the stories that they lived are deeply alive in your life. And that is both as a source of tremendous strength and support and as a for the unresolved stories as those obstacles in your path that you don't know how to get over. So I think constellations is particularly helpful for like those really intractable problems where somebody's just keeps circling around something and can't move through it. Sometimes constellations is what you might call the root cause, meaning there's a family system as ancestral origin. And I think more commonly, it's both, right? Like I certainly know that for me, well, I think of astrology as the way that it expresses um, ancestral patterns and past life patterns. What I was going to say is I know that for me, there are certain stories and themes that are very much both past life and ancestral. I think we tend to pick families that express those themes that we're working on as a soul anyway. And so the actual practical part of doing a constellation, different people do it differently. I do it quote unquote blind, which means that, all right, here's how you do a constellation real quick. So you got the facilitator, you have a client, the client has an issue that they want to work on, often something somewhat urgent. And you have a group of people. There are these little square mats, like little mini yoga mats, and the client will privately to themselves, this is the blind part, assign a member of their family or an issue, it can be something abstract, to a mat. So they'll put out a mat for dad and a mat for themselves and a mat for grandma and a mat for their brother and, you know, whoever we decide we're going to start the constellation with. Put those mats out in a space. The group is in a circle. And then the magic starts. People will be drawn to particular mats. It will be you know, sometimes it's faint, sometimes it's not there, but often there will be like, oh my God, I have to get on that pink mat. I don't know why. And then they go hop on the mat. And I'm telling you, everyone, and I mean everyone, is able to do this. They will have an experience that is on point relative to the being they're representing. And so then you let the dynamics of that family system play out. And with a little bit of training and education around how things flow well in a family system and how to resolve things that are unresolved, I'm just sort of tracking in the dark and stirring the pot and letting the healing intelligence, you know, move things. And the clients do a lot of the work. The clients just show up as what's happening on those mats and give you a lot of the information you need to get the whole family system to a better place. That is miraculous enough. It really does blow people's minds. Like it's one thing to talk about it, and I think people have the impression that it's going to be very, very subtle, and they might be one of those people that doesn't feel very much. It is not like that. Everybody, you might get on a mat that's a little mild, but at some point you're bound to get on a mat that has you enraged or sobbing. It's everyone. And I have seen thousands of people on these mats, and not just working with them in my own training. I've seen thousands of people be able to do this. So we're all really tapped in. We just get in the way. And because
we're expressing what we're tapped into, thinking it belongs to us.
Right.
Yeah.
100%. That's exactly right. And that's one of the ways that this work suggests we play our issues out from our ancestry, right? So if you are tapped into a grandfather who was excluded because he was gay in a time that wasn't okay, and then the family estranged him and never talked to him again, and you're tapped into him, you will wreck your life for the love of this guy. You will find yourself estranged from your own family. It can be that dramatic. Wow. And it's not even your life.
Yeah.
And so that's an extreme example, but that is the kind of thing that you can bring resolution to just by bringing awareness of this uncle and his what did I say? Grandfather? I don't know what I said.
I think grandfather.
Who isn't you. right? If you can see it, it's no longer you. So if you have a client like that who's able to actually see that grandfather and his story and can kind of bow to that being his fate and not the client's, that's a life-changing constellation that will change someone's life.
I have to ask you, I just had this image of the familial pattern of it, and the family being like a soul group, like, okay, we're all working on these things, these
Yeah.
soul topics. And if one expression of it doesn't isn't hasn't worked it out in whatever way worked out means, then it transitions into the next generation to continue. And it kind of, I don't know how those so families like keep working with each other. But I
Oh,
had this image of like the self and then the soul family, and like that being a team, and then that team is kind of within another team, and if we keep going, it's the whole human race, because we're not connected. Even
yeah.
biologically, we're all connected. So I'm curious if how much of it is separating, like it's his and not yours, and then how much of it is like holding it for the whole group.
Is a great question. Okay, so
Yeah.
and I have examples. So the first thing I want to say actually is a slight tangent, but it is important to be very, very clear about how dark and abusive and cruel some of these family stories are, right? So when you start taking people's family histories, you're going to hear some stuff, and everybody's got some stuff. So when you talk about soul family, like I resonate with that, even with the people who've really showed up as perpetrators in my family. But for some people, that might be like, fuck that. You don't know my family, right? And so I wanna honor that because I take that very, very seriously. And that is part of this work is getting to a place where, yes, even they can belong in service of the evolution of you and the whole. And the truth is, just like a plant, if you're a leaf or a branch on that tree, you thrive when the whole thing thrives. And so, but to your question about,
Jackie, that was so emotional for me. That just like brought up, I don't know what it was about that, but like my whole body just started like, it's almost like grief came up. That
yeah,
pain and grief is like the ownership of that as I mean, coming back to the source, like the whole,
yeah,
we all own it.
yeah, we don't get to that wholeness and that like we all thrive together place by pretending horrible things didn't happen.
And this is I feel like this is where we are on the planet right now, is like we're coming to terms with some stuff
Yeah,
globally that we
yeah,
all every single one of us has to own the pain.
yeah, yeah, and a lot of it is ancestral. And it's
Mm-hmm.
and it's huge. It can be a vast amount of pain, which needs to be offset by a vast amount of love and trust. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's one of the beautiful things about constellations is that you are stepping into so much trust that the universe gets to show you how reliable it is in a way, and it can hold even that, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Now I
Sorry, derailed you.
want to hang out here for a minute with
Right?
with poignant hearts. Yeah.
It's just so real right now.
Yeah. And in my own life, so, one of the reasons this work is so important to me is that it changed my life and it changed my family. Um, and at the point that I got into constellations, I had been estranged from my dad for 12 years, and I was still young. Um, it took me 3 years. Like even knowing this work being similar to astrology, like I fell in love. I ate it and breathed it and just couldn't, I just wanted to understand it, which by the way, you never do. Like you never get to that point where you get it all. Um, or maybe I'm just not there yet. But um, despite that, it was 3 years before I could reach out to him. It takes time, right? You don't have to force a forgiveness that isn't authentic before you're ready to, embrace the whole of your family if that's what you're moving towards. Um, you don't have to have contact with somebody who's abusive, right? I energetically opened myself and released a lot of the resentment and a lot of the rage at my dad. I energetically did that like long before I was able to like make a little peace offer. Hi, you know, very timidly. Um, and it was more than half my life when I reached out. We had not been speaking for more than half my life. It was my Saturn return, Saturn opposition to Saturn return, which for those of you listening is 14 to 15 years. Um, Yeah. So yeah, none of this is kumbaya, just let everybody off the hook. And it also is sort of a radical call for everybody all together. And who knows why those people got to play those roles in your life, but you know, there's a lot of us who will say, and that was the best thing that ever happened to me. The worst thing that ever happened to me was the best thing that ever happened to me. How is that possible? You know?
Yeah. I mean, life is a paradox.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to your point, what I hear too is that the person can play that role, and through constellations and even through astrology, you can see the role being played and the connected love behind it that isn't expressed through that role,
Yeah.
but is still there,
Yeah.
and shifting the relationship from the role being the soul to the soul playing a role. And no, you don't have to talk to that person because, that role might not be healthy for you to engage with any longer.
Right.
But to have resolution at that level
Yeah.
for yourself is like
Oh,
very freeing.
it's hugely freeing. Yeah. And this is not guaranteed. It's not something you even necessarily want to expect. But one of the cool things about this work is that your family system might change without you doing a thing. They don't have to know you did it. They don't have to know what happened. You don't have to tell them anything, and the whole system might reorient. And that happened actually with me and my dad. He like right on time. Like his transformation was astonishing. And he didn't become like, um,
Super dad.
yeah, he didn't become like super dad, but it was an astonishing transformation.
Wow.
Yeah,
Because you're working with the system, not
that's
just
right.
you.
And
Yeah.
it's real. And that's one of the things I didn't say in my explanation. It would be remarkable enough if that's it and it was just the experience, but it's not just the experience. It's real. It has real impact in the souls of you and the people that you've worked with.
I think I asked a question around something.
You did.
I'm
Let's
not sure if
go
we
back to that.
answered
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So you asked,
It was somewhere. I don't know what it
it's
was.
okay, no worries. You asked about the difference between sort of a theme being a generational, like family soul theme that everybody carries together. I mean, with one generation building upon the next and working on it further versus being kind of tied up in somebody else's story.
Aha, yes. Yeah. That's a good question.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So Yeah, I think I will use my own family. I'm already talking about this stuff, so we'll keep talking about my own stuff. Um, so on my dad's side, I'm Jewish. And time after time, my own constellations having to do with one brother, constellations having to do with the other brother. Oh man, on that dad line, we're gonna go back to Eastern Europe and some real victim perpetrator shit. Yikes. And this happened at the level of my great grandfather and my great great grandfather and their families, and probably my, great grandmother, and I could tell you some stories, and I won't go there, and I don't know the specifics of what happened, because like so many families, you come here to get away and you don't talk about it anymore, right? And so that's how it carries down, because it's not processed. So victim perpetrator themes just carrying down from one generation to the next to me and my brothers. Um, when you can turn around and see the stories of that great grandfather and his perpetrator victim dynamic, um, you can differentiate and you stop living in perpetrator victim dynamics as much. And yet, the outsider theme, the Jewish theme, right? That's all still so alive in me. And I'm not spiritually active in my Judaism. But by some strange twist of fate, a lot of my closest people and ex-partners are not just Jewish, they're half Jewish, which is also what I am. So there's this like, you're not quite like the tribe is already the outsider. And then we don't quite fit in the tribe or with the Goyim. There's this sort of outsider thing that has carried down that, as we already kind of discussed, is also a strength. Like I like being the witch in the woods. I'm stoked on where I've gotten to find my way in this life. And there's no doubt that I hold that role as a kind of an outsider. And there's other Jewish themes that are, pretty clear that Jews are considered the people of the book, um, because of this incredibly rich intellectual history that some people say is, um, the way we managed to survive without our own land, kind of a thing. I I mean, you can probably tell talking to me, I'm pretty intellectual, right? I'm pretty heady, trying to figure it out. Like there's a lot of ways in which I'm quite Jewish, is what I'm trying to get to. And um, I did not anticipate this getting so stirred up again culturally, you know, and that is painful, watching the victim perpetrator dynamics in just fully flare up in the Jewish, um, in the story of the Jews, you know, and definitely not clearly or cleanly on either side. Anyway, sorry, that took a little bit of a turn, but does that make sense? Am I making sense? Like I'm carrying the themes forward, but I am not living in this unresolved victim perpetrator dynamic where I'm attracting perpetrators because I'm wedded to being a victim, or I'm in my shadow acting
Yes.
out as a perpetrator on others. Right.
Yes, it's a sense of awareness of the um emergence. I'm going to use the word karma, but like, we as a human race, we're like creating all the time, and we're doing it unintentionally or unconsciously, maybe intentionally, unconsciously. But we're creating these stories, and something like, the Jewish persecution, um that's a global story that impacted everyone at one point or another, regardless of whether or not you were alive during that time. And it
Right.
has a ripple effect. And and you can be caught in that ripple and be sucked by the current, or you can kind of float on the top of it and observe it and see like, oh gosh, and where can I be supportive in allowing this to resolve, piece by piece by piece. Because I do think that's what we're doing in the background, all of us that are like in the woods that nobody sees.
Yeah, yeah,
We're all like resolving things, and it has an impact on the global human awareness and consciousness, even if people never participate
yeah,
or never realize. And that's our work
yeah,
to
yeah,
do that.
yeah.
Uh, yeah.
This
And
oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, so you did a personal constellation for me, and this came up in that as well, being that my family is from Germany.
Oh,
Remember?
yeah,
So my
I knew we were
grandfather
drawn
was
to
in
each other
World
for
War
some
II.
reason. Yeah.
Yes, yes. See, there you
I'm
go.
also a quarter Jewish on my, or sorry, a quarter German on my mom's side, and I genuinely believe that that is why my parents got together. Is that's what people do, is they will heal
Mhm.
war by marrying each other.
Yes. Yeah. So
Heal it. It's usually a very difficult relationship. Anyway, continue.
yes. Well, but it's part of the process of like, I want to say undoing karma, although I'm starting to have more of a problem with the word karma, but cause and effect, essentially.
Yeah.
That ripple is like the effect of something. And um, anyway, I wanted to say I'm going to include that recording so that if people want to listen to that process
Oh, wow.
and how, I mean, I stepped on that mat that was, so I didn't know what any of the mats were. Jackie assigned them the topic. So I was blind to the mats, and she would help facilitate me stepping on each mat and feeling into what that mat was bringing up from the system. And one of the mats was the World War II.
Uh-huh.
And I stood on it and I just like melted into a puddle. So I'll share that for people who are like so super interested. They want to listen to an hour of my sobbing, but
That's wild. So you did an audio recording of the whole
you
constellation.
recorded it.
I record. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Yes.
This was a psychosynthesis session. It wasn't a group constellation.
No, it was just me and you. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Cool, cool, cool.
Yes. Yes. So that's why I can share it, because I'm the only
Yeah.
one who has to give permission. So there you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unless I have to ask you, do I need to ask you?
Oh, I love it.
Okay.
I don't know. I hope somebody listens to it. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, okay.
Well, I want to just briefly say, because we touched on, some of the poignant material about the difficult people in the difficult people in people's families, and how you like forcing forgiveness isn't the path. I mean, I don't know, it might work for you for a temporary period, but if it's not a genuine letting go of the wrongs on some level, then it's probably not going to stick or bring healing. But in constellations, you give the perpetrator, and this is all kinds of perpetration, it's not just war, right? All kinds of perpetration. You give the perpetrator, once you get them to the place where they can accept it, you give them the weight of the responsibility, the guilt for what they've done. And that humanizes them. You can literally, if you can manage this transition in a constellation, you can literally watch a perpetrator show up in a constellation like they're a force of nature that is connected to no one and needs no one and doesn't care about the impact on anyone. If you can get them to a point where they can accept the responsibility and guilt for what they did, they will become human again. They will become soft again, right? It's not anybody else having to hold them accountable. It's not anybody else having to carry the guilt, which often the victims want to do. Um, it's not being forgiven by other people. It's giving them the space to pick up that responsibility and guilt themselves so that they can get on with their lives, even though they might actually be dead, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Humanizing the perpetrators by letting them carry the responsibility. You're like, where do I go from here, Jackie?
No, I'm just thinking about how perpetration can, when it happens, it can be mutual.
Hmm.
And that when we allow our perpetrator to carry their weight and humanize them, sometimes like what comes up in me is like, oh no, this person needs to suffer. And then suddenly like I'm the perpetrator.
Yeah,
um it's
exactly
an
so.
interesting
Exactly so.
process.
And that's how the victim keeps the dynamic violent and icky and in a downward spiral.
Mm-hmm.
But as the victim, using those black and white terms because they come together and they can't be extracted from one another. And exactly as you're saying, the victim becomes the perpetrator. Exactly so.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, as the victim, often it's taking space and turning elsewhere while they have their process. Or yeah, I mean, maybe you're not turning elsewhere. Maybe you're just taking space, and maybe that space looks like a lot of time. Maybe that space looks like 3 generations.
Yeah. Hmm. So speaking of which, I think we've done some work. I think I can't remember when or how, but I'm sure we have. Um, Around my sister. I want to say like 2 or 3 years ago, maybe. And I can't remember the specifics, but in the last like, well, since my stepdad got sick and passed away in the last 3 months, 3 months, I had the dynamic completely shifted in that part of my family, my sister, my mom. There's like a whole dynamic there. And it's weird. All of a sudden, like I see her as running her own thing, and um it's very independent from me all of a sudden. But it's never been like that. And I do feel like it's a result, a delayed return result of work that I've done around that relationship that feels very karmic. That relationship is just like,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sure we're playing out family stuff from like 6 generations ago.
yeah, yeah.
So it takes me over. I mean, it's like, whoa, and
I get that.
I'm like this robot that's been taken over by something, you know?
Yeah.
And I finally feel separated from it, which is significant.
I mean, I think that that brings up a really important point, which is you can't do it till it's time. Um, I, I think my attitude when I got into constellations was like, let's get everything, let's just bring a cloud through all the family stuff. Not so, not so. And without getting into mom's side of the story too much, like literally not till she passed were certain things available. Um, and that's, I mean, you can look to the astrology to that to some extent, but yeah, it's there's still a mystery here, folks, and there's still divine timing. And sometimes in a constellation, I have to just be like, that's, we sometimes all I can do is get the client to a more empowered place and nothing else has improved. Right? And I mean, still, it's worth it for the insight and to be able to accept the dysfunction as like, that's not going to change right now can be worth it. It's a bitter pill to swallow, but acknowledging what is, quote unquote, is strong, potent, useful medicine a lot of the time. But yeah, you can't always shift something until it's the right moment. And who knows why it was. I mean, I don't know enough about the story of your stepdad and your mom and how that might relate to what
I don't have a
was
clue.
going on for you too. But
I
I
don't have
mean,
a clue.
yeah,
I don't know.
I will say, and just because I'm a fan of personal vulnerability and, owning your shit and not acting like you have it more together than you do. Me and my brother have been through it the past couple of years too. Holy shit. And we love each other to pieces. But it is hard to even describe how challenging it has been in the aftermath of mom's passing. And of course, I just treat it like my training. It's like this is I'm being trained in sibling stuff right now. Okay, cool. But yeah, I I do think I would like to think that I dealt with that in ways that were unusual and beneficial because of, all my time in this work and still it was incredibly hard. And our relationship, thank God, still exists, but that's kind of all I can say at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think to an earlier point, like challenging things are good. And then, we're working your life.
Good Saturn.
Saturn,
Said good. Saturn, good.
Saturn, good. Saturn, challenging.
Oh, Saturn, good.
Oh gosh.
Oh, I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
No, just the, yeah, I don't know. That's
No, I
enough.
didn't mean I was just.
I don't know what I was saying actually. I don't know I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm getting
Oh.
old and I think my brain doesn't work as well as it used to. Maybe that's a story, but
Maybe so, but it also works better in other ways.
it works
Um,
better in other ways. That's true. That's
yeah,
true.
you were talking about hard being good. You're talking about the
Yeah.
obstacles. I mean, I think that's part of the impetus for this podcast, right? Is to,
Yes, that's what I was going to say was that it's like the phony holy that anybody has it all done
yeah,
and figured out.
yeah,
Even the enlightened are part of a system. And you can't get out of being part of a system because you are part of the system. And we don't have to have it all figured out. We don't have to have our relationships be right or perfect or the way we wish they could be for us to be doing what we're here to do and learning what we're here to learn.
yep,
It doesn't have to look good or perfect.
yep,
Yeah.
100%. Um, you just made a point that this teacher I keep mentioning made at one point that enlightenment it's a function of the field, it's a function of the whole. There's a reason why around 5000 BC there were all these enlightened masters that showed up at once, right? It was a function of the field, the whole field. So yeah, individuals are just, you can only go as high as not that it's keeping you down to a certain level, you can push the edges,
Mm-hmm.
right? In theory. But yeah, exactly. We're part of something bigger.
Yeah. And that something bigger has purpose. I don't know about meaning, but purpose in the sense of it exists for something and it exists for us. And the story that's playing out is all of our story. And I knew that a long time ago when I first started really getting into my own spirituality. The very first download I had was basically like, you're just doing the little part of work you can do to bring up the entire system. And along with all the other people who are willing to do that. And it's a thousand hundred monkey thing, whatever, it's like the
Yeah.
system will start to tilt.
Yeah.
And that's good enough for me. I don't even have to be alive when the thing flips, but like as long as I'm in my own life expressing what I'm just going to say, like the star assignment is like, then I think that I could die at any point and be like, well, like, cool. I did what I was supposed to do. What's next?
Yeah. I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Um, yeah, and as the pressure of the 100 monkeys starts to rise, This is, I think you said this in your intro. I listened to your introduction
Oh,
yesterday.
thanks.
Yeah, I think you said this, that, as that pressure starts to rise, all the detritus, all the hard stuff, all the like the
The free
resistance
stuff.
shows up exactly as things are actually moving. And we're not going to see that. We're not going to see it on the news. You know,
Yeah.
you might see it in your life. You might also see a lot of people in your life getting absolutely rocked. And maybe one day they'll say that's the best thing that ever happened to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much, Jackie.
Yeah. My pleasure. Thanks for asking
Been
me.
fun.
Yeah.
Yes. And I so appreciate you as a soul and as a human being and as someone who's frankly courageous enough to live their life fully out. Like, I'm sure you have plenty of challenges, right? Like, working for yourself is so hard. There's just so many things you have to handle, and like making sure that your rent gets paid and all of that. And to be able to be a female and to just step out and be like, this is what my life calling is. I'm going to do it. And whatever comes up, it's what comes up. Like, I'm just so, I very much look up to you. And having met you in 2015, you're like this, you were like this little shiny star in this little container. And now you're like, whoa, like, oh, this huge being. It's just so cool in 10 years, the change I've seen in you. So I'm just so happy to have you here and to be part of my life. So thank you.
That's so awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate the reflection. And I will just say that I am with Pluto on the midheaven, very much in that death rebirth, and the courage that you're talking about is I'm finding it. I'm finding it, but I can't say that I've fully let it rip yet. We're just about to get there. That's what I'm.
That's how I'm feeling too.
Yeah.
I have all that, like how I get my rent paid. Like, I want to let go of it so bad. And I'm like, but,
Oh, almost
oh,
there. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm like, help,
Birth
help
pangs.
is on the way, hopefully. Yeah. Yeah. So, anything you want to share with the audience in terms of, I mean, we'll put your contact information down below so that if someone's interested in doing psychosynthesis work with you or getting astrology reading or whatever, they can hook up with you directly. But anything you want to share or?
Yeah, I'll just say that I'm happy to, because what I do is so mysterious, unknown, a little bit different. I'm not sure this conversation helped to pin it down. I'm happy to have a chat with anybody. If you want to reach out and you're curious about a session, but you're not sure, I'm really happy to have a quick phone call to see what makes sense for you. Maybe you just want an astrology reading. Maybe you want to do psychosynthesis. Maybe you want to sign up for a constellations workshop, and I can help you figure out if it's a fit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Highly recommend Jackie.
Grace.
All around awesome human being. So thank you, love.
Yay, thank you.
Yes. Thanks, everyone, for listening to this episode of the Coaches Ascension Podcast with Jackie Ames, astrologer and family constellations practitioner. Of course, all of Jackie's information and any resources that we mentioned in this podcast are located down below. The code that you're looking for to be able to listen to my own session with Jackie to get an idea of what it's like to be in a family constellation session. This one was a one-on-one rather than a group, so I can share it with you. The code is Jackie Ames. So you'll just click the link below, enter the code, and you'll have access to that recording. Of course, like and subscribe so we can get this podcast out to as many people as possible. And if you have not yet become a member of our Patreon page, you can do so for free or paid and get access to exclusive podcast episodes, as well as free intuitive readings. So I hope to see you in our next episode of the Coaches Ascension Podcast. Until then, be curious, be courageous, and try on something new. Take care, and we'll see you again soon. Old ways fading, new light calls. We rise together, soul and all.